I'm feeling incredibly lucky being able to make this video from what is probably one of the most stunning locations that I have ever been to. I'm in the country of the Maldives, and for those of you who don't know, the Maldives are a group of islands known as an archipelago within the Indian Ocean. Now the Maldives itself is made up of 26 different atolls, and within that there's about 1,192 separate islands. And the point of the video today is actually to talk to you about the impacts of climate change. However, what I think is important first is that you understand the formation of the Maldives, because that really is one of the biggest things that's going to contribute to why the Maldives are experiencing such significant impacts of climate change. So as I said, the Maldives is made up of about 26 different atolls. Now atolls form in a very specific way. Now they form through underwater volcanoes, and we know that as volcanic eruptions continue to happen, layers of lava are added to the volcano, and eventually causes them to become bigger and bigger and bigger. Now the same thing happens underwater with underwater volcanoes, and eventually the tip of the volcano might just start to appear above the surface of the ocean. Now in this case, what happens is coral starts to develop around the tip of the underwater volcano, and that develops just kind of under the surface of the ocean. Now it creates something called a fringing reef, which is basically just a ring of coral around the volcano. Now over millions of years, the volcano itself will start to subside, which basically just means it will start to sink back underneath the water surface there, and that's mainly due to erosion. But the coral reef will remain, and over time again, unfortunately, the coral will also be subjected to continued erosion, mainly through the waves. And what will happen is the coral itself will be eroded into fine grains of sand, very much like what I am sitting on here. Now the sand will develop and build up on top of the coral reef, and eventually it will start to appear above the surface of the ocean. Now this is what an atoll is, and it's usually separated by a body of water known as a lagoon. So atolls are ring-shaped islands that are separated by a body of water known as a lagoon, and they have developed through the erosion of the coral that surrounded the underwater volcano. Now, the reason why I'm telling you this is because the formation of these atolls mean that these are incredibly low-lying. They're very flat islands. Now, that is important in itself. If we think about the Maldives, the highest point, the highest natural point in the Maldives is 2.4 metres above sea level. Now, to put that into perspective, the highest natural point in Scotland would be the tip of Ben Nevis, which is 1,345 metres above sea level, so a significant difference. Now, the average height of the Maldives is really about 1 metre above sea level, just over 1 metre above sea level. Now what we're seeing is some of the impact of climate change is as the glaciers and ice sheets are continuing to melt, that is meaning that the sea levels are rising across the world. Now the impacts, as you'll probably be able to start to see for the Maldives, is that over the next 100 years, the sea levels are expected to rise anywhere between 10 and 100 centimetres. Now 100 centimetres obviously being a metre, and if that was to happen, then you can see what's going to happen to the Maldives. It's going to be completely submerged in water. And it's thought that actually within the next kind of 50 to 100 years, the Maldives are going to see such significant impacts on climate change that they are going to have some real struggles ahead of them. They're going to have increased flooding, they're going to have problems with potentially different tropical diseases, all through obviously the impacts that climate change is having on us. But on top of that, the country could potentially be completely submerged in water in the next 50 to 100 years, which doesn't seem like a very long time away at all. Now, this is not a lecture, it's just trying to raise awareness on some of the impacts that climate change is having on countries across the world, because although in some of our countries that we live in we might not necessarily see some of these really significant impacts of climate change, but it's not to say that they're not happening, because in the Maldives the impacts of climate change are very much a very serious topic and a huge reality for them.